on.
Well, welcome everybody to our favorite features of Oracle Analytics Cloud. My name is Dan Vlamis. I'm joined by several other people. We'll let the attendee count kind of scroll on, and then we'll begin here as people jump in. And then I'll get into the meat of things. I'm joined today by Wayne Van Sluys. Say hello, Wayne.
Hello, everyone.
And we also have Avinash from Oracle Product Management.
Hey, everyone.
And then we're also joined by Philippe Leon, who's going to be not presenting today, but handling some of the Q&A stuff. So thanks for joining us, Philippe.
Thank you, Dan.
So we're going to talk about our favorite features of Oracle Analytics Cloud. And you can see contact information. Feel free to reach out to us for more information. And I'll talk after some intro remarks. We'll get into the meat of the matter and show some of the things in the latest version of Oracle Analytics Cloud in the September release. So a little bit about, we also have some links that you may want to check out. There are things for Oracle Analytics videos. There's a link there. We'll make, by the way, the slide deck available. And Wayne or I will try to put these links into the chat so you all can look at these at your leisure. There's also, I'll point out, Oracle puts out with every release of Oracle Analytics Cloud a new features video. You can find it on their YouTube channel. And also, there's the bit.ly link to put that out. And that's a great way. That's frankly how I learned how to use these features. There's also the official documentation. There's the big, long, ugly link for it. As well as a place for Oracle Analytics community to talk about things, all things analytics in the community.oracle.com. Library with some examples that you can run and live demos that you can run as well on this. So all of these are links that you can look at more information on Oracle Analytics. This is in a series of TechCasts that we've been doing with the analytics and data Oracle user community. This is the organization. I'm the president of that, and then Wayne is also on the board of that as well. We put together these webcasts every 2 weeks. You can see the list on our live webcast page. Quick plug for upcoming things in the series is a webcast on November 2nd on new features in Oracle Database 23C with Kathy and Gerald Benzel. From Oracle. They'll be talking about what's new in the Oracle database. Then November 16th, Graph Analytics for SQL developers, new match clause in SQL 2023. Again, and on November 30th, unveiling the mystery of Beginner's Guide to Machine Learning Interpretability. And then we plan on doing in December 14th, we'll be talking about the next release of OAC. So if you like this format, join us on December 14th. You can already sign up for that, and it'll be on our favorite features of OAC from the November release. We plan on doing these every 2 months. You can find the full schedule at andouc.org/techcasts. We also have merchandise, things to help support the analytics and data Oracle user community that cover changing mug and other things if you want to join us. More information on AnDOUC.org. This is a community. We invite you to be involved with us, see more than just join our TechCasts. You can also see our website at AnDOUC.org. You can join our Slack workspace and watch previous TechCasts. We've built up quite a library at this point. 3 years, I think 3.5 years or so of TechCasts that you can go back and look at. And then join us in any of the other social communities for there, and the links we'll try and put in the chat. I'll also mention that we have our, you can put in Q&A if you click on the Q&A button on there, and we'd love to handle any of your questions, whether it be during the webcast. It's why we invited Philippe to join us to handle the hard questions, and we may pipe in as well. And also, and any comments that you have, say hello in the chat on there. If it's just a comment, we do encourage you to put questions, though, in the Q&A widget so that we can track which questions we've answered and which ones we haven't. I also want to put out a quick plug for our upcoming conference, Analytics and Data Summit 2024. If you've been following us, we did change the date recently from March to April to avoid some conflicts with our other user group sessions. So that's taking place April 9th through 11th at the Oracle Conference Center in Redwood Shores. The call for speakers is open through the end of this month through October 30th and then closes. So we'd love to have you on stage sharing what you know or what your experience has been with analytics or data related products within the Oracle stack. So submit your abstracts. There's a link on the main website, www.andouc.org/AND Summit 2024. And Sherry Abstracts will be looking at those and coming out with a schedule that you can look at. You can see the types of things we've gotten from, if you look at the schedule from previous years on there. So come join us on that. We are looking for people to speak. We're also looking for sponsors if you're with a company that might be interested in sponsoring some of that content. All right, with that, that's kind of the intro remarks. We're going to have some things from some features to be discussed by Wayne. Then I'll go through some features, and then Avinash will go through some of the other things. And we kind of go through and figure out what features do we especially want to highlight. It is not exhaustive. You can get that from the documentation, but we like to do kind of this live demo showing some of those things. With that, let me go ahead and unless there's anything else, I'll turn things over to Wayne and let him present on the stuff that he found most interesting or what he wanted to share. Wayne, it's off to you.
Ready. Great. So I'm going to kind of be looking at a different screen because it's a bigger screen and easier for me to read. Back in 2022, there was the release of some of the APIs to access and manage the server. Mainly was the taking snapshots and managing your snapshots that way. So for many of you, when you set up your first OAC instance, you thought, well, I'm going to do a non-production. And then when you wanted to go to production, you realized that, oh, nuts, I can't scale up a 1 OCPU. So you ended up having to create a brand new instance and then port everything over from a bar file. Well, now we can go from 1 up to 8, which is awesome. This is a nice new feature that I find very helpful for people who are just starting out with OAC. They don't want to have all that high cost of the OCPU at a 2 or a 4, and they can do some digging around, planing, prototyping with a 1, and then when they're ready to move on to a fully production instance, they can go up to the increments into 2 through 8. So that one's nice. That one I'm finding helpful for a lot of brand new clients. So my next one are the APIs, and I really like the videos that Mike Duran has done. So I'm not going to go through those, but if you go out to the YouTube channel, Mike has 2 up there, one for the connections, managing and creating connections, and then the other is on managing and updating system settings. So those are really some great ones. And I'm going to grab those and put them in the chat real quick. So we have that. What I wanted to say is most people get kind of intimidated by the API. And they think that they need to do a lot of hardcore programming. But it's not that difficult. Mike shows you how to do it with the Postman. He has a bunch of great blogs out there on how to get your bearer token and use the building up your curl or your JSON package. Well, in the documentation, there are some of the curl commands that you can use in Postman. Now, if you're worried about, oh, I don't want to constantly work in Postman, the neat thing in Postman is that if you create a new, you import the curl out of the documentation and you've updated all of the header information and the body information, when you come over to this little icon over here, it says code. It will generate a version of code in many different programming languages. And I like working in PowerShell, and there's the code for PowerShell. And then all I need to do is copy it into my IDE and update a few other strings, get my bearer token script written, and I'm up and running. And I can have it as executable code on my IDE, like VS Code, and I can run that and do all my settings through that. So take a chance, take a look. I think you'll find that the APIs will be very, very helpful in managing your Oracle Analytics instance. And with that, I think it's Dan's turn. Or is it Avinash's turn?
I'll go on next. Let me go ahead and so I'm going to go through several different features in here. Let me share my screen. I can find it. All right, so there's a couple things that I wanted to showcase. One is just a little feature, and you know, it's funny, Oracle has now gone towards, instead of big feature releases, little smattering things. And boy, if you don't keep up on things, you miss some of the new capabilities. I'm going to show you just a little nit thing. When you look at dots on a map or dots in a scatter chart, sometimes the size of the dot makes things so that you cannot control that. And they just implemented a little thing that allows you to change. If I come, normally most of the time you all have seen probably when you click on a visualization, you have the grammar pane. If you haven't seen in a couple of releases, you haven't noticed, the properties pane is now a pane in here, or a tile within this grammar pane area. And for a scatter chart, there is now the ability to change the size of the dots in here. And this is something we're using now. Notice all those dots overlap. If I change that to 5, and that's a little slider on here, a cute little slider control to change things as well. The size of the dots makes it so now if you maximize this, you can see things more easily or less and change that back and forth. So just a little tiny thing that just makes life easier as you're developing visualizations and you want to make out things on the scatter chart. So that's one little thing that I wanted to show that I believe is new in the release. And then a couple other things happened. If you haven't noticed, the tiles now have been updated. If I go and look at, I had to redo this dashboard. This is kind of one of the demo dashboards that we put together for looking at things. And these tiles, I switched from the old tile. You'll see on the list of different visualizations, now the old tile is being deprecated. And so you can't create new ones. The old ones still work, by the way, but you need to migrate towards the new tile visualization. Indeed, when I tried to do this at first, it didn't work because I was using existing tile and I needed to switch it to the new tile viz. Doesn't happen automatically. You need to change the visualization type. Anyway, one of the things now that you can do is have with your tile, you have the ability to change the different types of the label position and the title position and such on that. And what's new also is the ability to assign a description. I'll tell you, it takes a while to get used to where is, you'll see I turned off the label. I can change that to above and so forth, and I'll get multiple things at once. Otherwise, it takes on the title. And now is the ability to pull the description. What's a little different about this, I'm running this against a data set. So as a result, without this, if I have this set to auto, it will pull from the semantic model what it is. Well, you don't have a descriptions in a data set from a semantic model. So that would pull automatically from if I was running against the semantic layer, or I can just set it to custom. And in this case, I'm giving it information like profit ratio is profit divided by sales. So now that can appear in here and make it so that I can see that as a description in here. All right, I'm trying to get that. Find custom. And that should appear. All right, I'm not sure why that's not appearing. I'm not hitting the right buttons. Let me go on to the next thing that I was going to show is the ability to come in here and change the type of in the list of prompts. You have a new dashboard filters. If you haven't kept up, there's now the ability to have dashboard filters that appear in here. And what's new is especially the ability to have not only this type of list filter where I can change this from January to March and see the data change. All right, that's now a navigation capability on the dashboard and change that back and forth. I can also come in and change the type of drop down this is by changing this to the type of filter type. This is set to list right now. If I change it instead to a list box, the user experience is different. Now I have a simpler navigational control. We have the ability to say no selection or no are in there. You can control that whether you want to allow that or not. You can also select individual values. Note you can have multi-select turned on or off. That allows me to select a single month or multiple months. This is obviously designed for a single month. And I can change that, or I can even change it to a slider. If I change it to a slider, the type of control shows this where you can slide back and forth. And there's even a cute little thing in here where you can turn on the play capability and it'll play through the slider values, allow you to manipulate it. Or if you click the play button within the slider, it will change the prompt value every couple of seconds on that. And change through. One of the things I did notice as it seems like a limitation, unless Avinash, you know differently, I'll put you on the spot, is whether I can control how wide this is. Notice.
Yeah, you can. There is, if you go to the property panel, I'll show you how to do that.
Yeah, do it.
Yeah, go to this general tab.
Uh-huh.
And then max box width, change that from auto to fill.
Thank you. I didn't see that when I was preparing for this. You know, the highlights kind of, you have to click around on these things to find some of these extra things. Thank you for helping me out, Avinash. All right, so those are some of the things on some of the filter controls, the custom point sizes. And I have one other thing to show with parameters in here. But Avinash, since I might put you on anything else I should be showcasing in here while I'm in here.
The only thing to highlight is the list box type filter. If you go back and change the slider to a list box,
yep.
You can see that the multi-select is disabled. This is designed to be a single select filter for now, and we will support multi-select in an upcoming release.
Okay, good to know. Indeed, there's times when we want this simpler type of control. So I'm glad to hear I noticed that when I was preparing, but good to know that's coming later on. Okay, thanks. And then with the list, I believe we can turn on this multi-select.
Correct. Yeah.
Yep. And be able to select multiple values. That comes up in a little bit also on here. If I look at the profit ratio, I've done something else where I made it so that this guy, there's now a data action. And if I look at my list of data actions, for profit ratio, I now have an analytics link where I can, when I click on this, it's going to go to profitability subcategory, a different canvas. And I can choose whether to pass the values or not for the various parameters and such. Where do I pass the values? This gets a little bit tricky, I'll tell you, when you control this. And I had to change this to none because I couldn't figure out why I was passing all the values to the next canvas. So play around with this on here as well. And it's very powerful here. You can anchor what you want. Look at the video on here. I won't have time to go through everything, but it's a very nice capability. What that allows me to do now is when I right click on this, you can also set it so that if you click on it, it does stuff. But then I've added this value, this control called view profit ratio by subcategory. And when I click that, when I right click on this guy and select that, it's going to go to another canvas in my workbook. It can go to a different canvas. There's other types of data actions you can do to go to a URL and so forth. And that allows me to go to what is designed for, in effect, a drill down screen. So in this case, I'm looking at a canvas of my various profit ratios and such. And I've set this up purposefully so that I do this in A/B type testing with a baseline segment and an analysis segment. And I'm doing this by using parameters, and I'm looking at two different either segments or sets of segments. And I've set the default on this baseline segment to corporate. That's being controlled by the parameters capability in here. And notice I have a baseline segment. I added a parameter. This is kind of like using variables in the old product. So if I look at baseline segment, I have this as a customer segment are the various values that I can use. And that's a text data type, a variable that controls what is my baseline segment that I want to index to. And what's new is the ability to have not only any value or logical SQL query, which has been in here. What's new is the ability to specify a specific column. And this is a release, by the way, folks, that kind of got me to say, all right, now I can use parameters effectively. There was the way to bind these parameters to individual columns before, but to me now this interface makes sense for me. I define the parameter and I set it as a column, and I say this thing called baseline segment is a list of customer segments. At this point, I'm only allowing a single one. I don't have this to allow multi-select. I can make it so that it's multiple, but then this controls customer segments, and I'm defaulting the value to corporate because that's what I want to treat as the baseline. So now this baseline segment allows me to look at profit ratio for the baseline segment is in light purple, and then whatever I'm doing the analysis of, I've set as dark purple, and you can see the difference of the profit ratio across different subcategories between my baseline and my analysis. Now, maybe I might design this so that the baseline is not even changeable. That may be our corporate standard. And then all I do to compare to the corporate is select what do I want as my analysis segment. And when I choose that, then it's going to change my value to consumer and update my dashboard when I click off the control. Now I'm looking at what my baseline is versus what I want to analyze. As well, I have a profit ratio of analysis of the analysis minus the segment, and I can see the difference between those. Think of this bar as the difference between this purple bar and this dark purple bar, and so forth. And this is showing how my analysis segment, in this case consumer, changes from a baseline. That baseline could be much more complicated, could be a higher level total, all sorts of things. Then I'm also showing in here a list of those. I don't know if there's a way. One of the things I'd like to do is to be able to right click on this and set a parameter via that. I don't know that I can do that via data actions. Avinash, again,
that's part of the road.
You know if that's possible?
Yeah, it's part of the roadmap. Not
Okay.
yet, but that is definitely on our roadmap. We'll get to that in the first half of next year.
Okay, great. Thank you. That's kind of where we're heading, I think, in terms of really using a parameter framework. Oracle has a nice framework and things are being rolled out release by release. I would say this is the time when I'm saying, yep, I can effectively use this now. Let me show you how that's done as well in the database, in the list of values in here. If I scroll down to my calculations, here is how I'm using that parameter and how I'm setting that measure. I'm looking at the filter of profit using customer segment equals baseline segment divided by the filter of sales using customer segment. So that's how I'm doing the profit ratio for the baseline. I've got the same thing when it comes to analysis segment. And I can do that, and you can even get into doing this ratio here, the profit ratio by customer, by subcategory. I'm using a much more complicated, I'm taking this minus this, and you can use all these things with this at parameter syntax to effectively use parameters in your calculations. You can also put parameters in the titles, all sorts of things. I haven't gotten into all of that yet. But that's where I plan on using this more in our canvases as we use this more. That's why I wanted to give it. It's a use case I have not seen Oracle use before in their demos of a baseline versus what the customer wants to see. And then you can combine that as you drill from one canvas to another. Any comments on that? Otherwise, Avinash, I'll turn things over to you to share kind of your favorite features.
Sounds good. All right, let me share my screen. I'm going to share 3 of my favorite features from the September release. The first one is kind of near and dear to me, not because this is my product feature area, but because it's one of the experiences in workbook where there was a bit of ambiguity in terms of what an author can do in Visualize versus what they can do in Present. And we kind of streamlined, remove the ambiguity and streamline the experience. And I like to start with this one slider where on a workbook, we strive to provide a unified experience. So you have the data workspace where authors can wrangle the data, especially when you're working with data sets, right? Perform joins, use the data set recommendations, create data flows, use the output of the data flows as data sets, so on and so forth. And then Visualize becomes your primary workspace for content curation. You're designing your canvas, you're designing the layout of the canvas, you connect to a subject area, to a data set. You're using features like auto insights or drag and drop experience to curate your content. You're not thinking about how we want to tell the story yet for your end users, right? And Present is that workspace where we will add more capabilities for the author to tell the story to their end users. So think of Present as your primary workspace to build compelling consumer experiences on your workbook. And how you do that is you start by building a presentation flow. It's the analogy I like to provide is when you create a PowerPoint slide, you go on adding slides and then you later try to figure out how you want to order the slides, right? You might want to say slide 10 must be slide 8, right? Or you might want to hide certain slides that you think is no longer relevant for your audience. And then you can do other controls within PowerPoint, which may not be directly relevant to the controls that we want to expose in workbook, but there are workbook level controls that you want to expose to your end users, particularly the interaction controls. What kind of filters should be exposed to them, right? Should they be able to export the data? Should they be able to copy the data? Can I lock down those interaction patterns if there are sensitive data in my workbook, right? So that's called the fine-grained controls. And then the last is a navigation experience, right? So you might have seen bottom tabs is the default navigation style. And there are quite a few different styles of navigations. And we'll continue to add a couple of more towards the end of the year, including top tabs, which is the default for our classic product. And a lot of our classic customers love top tabs, right? So 3 main concepts in Present: build a presentation flow, define what your navigation experience is, and then control the fine-grained properties that you want to expose to your consumer users, right? So before I go into the demo, here is a quick construct of what Present looks like. Before September, or before July, excuse me, you would those who have used Present, you would have seen that all the canvases that you had in Visualize would appear on the left-hand side panel, and the user would have to manually drag and drop the canvases into this presentation navigator, the navigator at the bottom, right? And that was an unnecessary experience. And we had some performance issues in terms of showing the thumbnails, on the left-hand side panel. So we kind of addressed those performance issues when generating the thumbnails. So in the new Present experience, what would happen is all the canvases in Visualize will by default participate in the presentation flow. And the left-hand panel will expose a bunch of properties that you can define at the workbook level. and there are properties that you can define per canvas, right? The workbook level properties, for example, is the navigation style, right? That is for the entire workbook. The header bar on the top can be controlled, right? You can customize the header bar. That's workbook specific control. But then the interaction controls are canvas specific, right? Do I want to turn off export on this canvas? You have to go to the select the canvas and then go to the active canvas properties and turn it off, right? So here is a workbook that I have. I'm the author, but I've loaded this workbook in a consumer mode or in a viewer mode. It's got a few different tabs on the bottom of it, right? Now, the way as author, I've designed this workbook is such that I've defined the scope of the workbook to be for these time periods, right? 2014, 15, and 16. I don't want my consumer users to be able to change that scope of data, right? How do I do that? I'll show you how we do that in Present. And I'm going to change the navigation styles, and I also want to limit the interactions that I want to provide for my consumer users on these different canvases. For example, the customer detail data has some sensitive data. I want to turn off, all of the interaction controls on this table list, right, including copy data and export of this data to a downloadable format, right? So let me go into the authoring mode, and I'll navigate to Present. And when you navigate to Present, by default, you would see that all the canvases are participating in the presentation flow. Let me give it a moment. Okay. All right, let me refresh my workbook real quick. And we'll go to Present again. And there are two main concepts I want to present in the new Present experience. As you land on Present, you would land on what's called an auto mode. An auto mode is a representation of your canvas exactly in the order that you have in Visualize, right? So if you look at the little toggle at the bottom here, this tells you that you landed on auto mode. Auto mode strives to be exactly in the same order of the canvas that you have as in Visualize, right? Now, for any reasons you want to change the order of these canvases as you tell the story, right? Or if you change or rename some of the canvas name or some metadata of the canvas properties or duplicate a canvas, you cannot do that in auto mode, right? But you can turn off this toggle that will basically give you a warning that, hey, you're going to switch to a manual mode. And within manual mode, you have some, actually more flexibilities to kind of tell your story. Now, if I want to move my customer details data as the second canvas, right, I can do that. I can also duplicate, rename certain canvases that participate in the presentation navigator. You can delete, hide the canvas. Any duplicated canvases can be deleted, right? So manual mode will provide you flexibilities to define the order of the canvases that participate in the presentation flow. And then it also provides you the flexibility to replicate the canvases in Present without having to redo everything in Visualize. But let's say that you have a use case where you want to have 3 different canvases for shift mode, right? One for each of the shift mode type. Now, rather than building them as base canvases in Visualize, you can simply go into manual mode and Present, duplicate this canvas, and set the shift mode value to be 1 for each of the canvases that you want to provide. And that way, you explicitly show your data for each of the shift mode in its own individual canvases. So there are use cases from customers as to why they want to duplicate customers, and it's a pretty interesting functionality to be there, right?
Avinash, can I just a moment on that use case you were talking about? We run into this. We have a prompt up at the top of the canvas, and we want it to have exactly what you were talking about, 3 different values. And we've done that, duplicate the canvas so that it's set 3 different ways. Is it now the capability to have 1 base level canvas, but now set to 3 different values when the presentation value of that? Is the presentation value independent from the design time experience of what it's set to?
Just the filter values. You're not defining any new content in Present, but if you had a filter in your base canvas, then you can duplicate the canvas in Present and create and set specific filter values for each of those individual canvases in Present.
Thank you. Okay, super.
Okay. So at any given point in time, when you switch from manual to auto mode, it's going to erase all of the customizations that you've done in present, and it's going to re-image from visualize and resync to what the content that you have in visualize, right? For example, let's just say that I am still in manual mode. I duplicated this canvas, right? For whatever reasons. Now, I know that I messed up my presentation flow. So you can pretty simply, click on the toggle, and it's going to tell you that, hey, this is going to be removed. This is the customization I've done. And you click OK. It's sort of an acknowledgement to the user that your customizations are removed, and you go back and resync from your base canvases in visualize, right? So that way, there's no fear of messing up your presentation flow. You're losing your work, right? There's always a way to resync and by going into auto mode. So this presentation navigator, by default is going to be in auto mode. And then based on your use case and requirements, you can go to manual mode and change whatever you need to do on the canvases in the presentation flow. The second thing is around the style. This is a navigation experience. The default is bottom tabs, right? Top tabs is coming in November. You're seeing it, this is a September demo, so we'll cover that in November. But then we already have in the product navigation bar, film strip, and you don't need to have if you don't need any navigation style, especially for single canvases, you can turn off to none, right? The important thing I want to highlight on this experience is the feature set, right? Now, we talked about the use case where as an author, I don't want my consumer users to be able to change this filter bar, this top level filters, right? Because this is the scope I am defining on the dashboard. So you can turn off the filter bar toggle. And then if you go to the active canvas tab, you see that there are a bunch of actions that we have exposed for the visualization menu. So this visualization menu is all of the right-click context menu option that the author sees, right? Not all of this is applicable for the consumer user, but things like sort, drill, edit, copy data, export, all of that is consumer interactions that we may choose to expose to the end users. So in present, for my customer detailed canvas, I know that this is sensitive data, so I don't want my users to be able to copy or export the data. So I'm going to turn those actions off, right? And I'm going to go to my sales performance canvas, and I want to expose the visualization toolbar menu. That way, a consumer user can change the visualization type or perform some level of starting, right? So that is only enabled on the sales performance tab. So I'm going to save the changes and load the workbook as an end user would see, which is in a viewer mode. And let's go to the customer detail tab. And when you right click, you would see that the export and the copy data is not enabled on this particular canvas, right? Now let's go back to the sales performance canvas. And here, if you select a mark and right click on it, you would see that some of the relevant actions that the author had chosen for this canvas is exposed. Still, a copy and export is disabled, but the additional actions that is shown here is the data actions, right, which is enabled for the canvas. And additionally, each of the toolbar shows the which toolbar options that the author has enabled. So if I want to change this as a consumer user from a bar chart to from a scatter to, let's just say, a table, right? I can do that. So this provides a little bit of more functionality and flexibility for the consumer user to be able to switch to their favorite visualization type if they feel like scatter is not the way I want to see the data. But remember that any changes that you do on the visualization types or any changes that you do on the toolbar is not persistent changes. It's valid only for that particular session, right? Now, the second feature that I'm going to talk about, which is the end user personalization. The future scope of end user personalization will be inclusive of some of the customization the end user does on this dashboard within the realms of the author curated experiences and interaction patterns that the author has exposed on the dashboard for the consumer users. All right, so that's present. It went live. The new experience is live in September. There'll be a set of core properties that we will add with November, and with that, the whole present experience will be complete. So let me move to my next favorite feature, maps. So one of the biggest challenges that we've had in maps is to not show the data labels on points, right? Which is like a critical functionality. Now here's an example of a map I've filtered down to just states in the USA to show the sales, and Dan showed that size was controllable in scatter. So we also added size in maps as well, so I can define the point size, let's say by maybe by quantity ordered, and the min and the max size is sort of defaulted using a backend algorithm, but these can be controlled when you go to the layers tab of the property panel. These min and max size can be defined. Let's just say if I want my max size to be 60 pixels, I'm going to do that, and you will see the bubble size became relatively becoming bigger to the range that we have provided here. Okay, so let's talk about data labels. The new property that we have added in September is the data label position. By default, is turned off. You can turn it off. Let's go ahead and turn on the data label and maybe show it as above. And by default, what would happen is, interesting, why is the data label not showing up? Okay, there you go. I'm not sure why it was. All right, so I think there was a small bug there, but we'll take care of that. So when you turn on data labels by default, right, it selects the fields from your core grammar column, right? And then the additional columns in your grammar can be chosen to be shown as data labels in your points within the map. So I'm going to do this, select all of them. There's an interesting property to show these data labels as multi-line, which becomes extremely handy. So when you turn multi-line, each of the label is now displayed as its own line, right? And the format of these sales and quantity ordered can be controlled. So if we go to the measure, excuse me, and change the format of sales to currency, decimal places, and let's just say we'll abbreviate to millions or thousands. Let me just say maybe thousands probably makes sense. I'm going to do that to thousands. Now your data label looks a lot more easier to read, right? So I think it's a very, very value add feature that we have added to maps in the September release. The allow overlap feature is also interesting when your data is dense and crowded. When turned on, we will not show, when turned off, we will not, the logic behind the scenes will automatically determine if there is overlap, and it will not display any of the data labels that overlap within adjacent point size nodes, right? The halo, we can talk about it in our next release. So this is an upcoming feature as well. You can also control the font size of the data labels, which is also another core property of any labels that we want to expose in the UI within the product. Okay, one more feature, and then I'll pass it back to Dan. Personalization, end user personalization. We launched this feature in public preview in September. What it means is that there is a toggle in the administrator console settings. So the administrator of the instance has to turn on the preview functionality for this feature to be enabled. And the feature is planned to be generally available with the January 2024 update. And will also be available for our OAS customers, coming up in March. When the feature goes GA, we will remove the preview toggle, meaning that the feature is enabled by default on the instance, right? Now, just to demonstrate, I've logged in as a consumer user because this is truly an end user personalization. And our first scope of personalization is focused on persisting the filter values. So the way the feature works is that any dashboard filters and visualization filters on the canvas or on the workbook across different canvases, the last saved or last interacted filter values will be automatically persisted. And when the consumer user exits the session and reloads the workbook, we'll basically look at what's called a snapshot. A snapshot is not, I should not be using the word terminology snapshot. It's more of an internal terminology, but we look at the personalized content for that user on that workbook, and we determine any persisted filters. We load that onto the workbook, so it's so that the user is kind of loading the workbook from the last interactive state that they were in, right? So that's why I call it as persisted filters. The last change filter values will be automatically persisted, and that is the initial scope of personalization that will become generally available in January. And the roadmap for personalization is pretty strong. We have a few core interesting concepts that will expand on filters and other customizations that the user does on the canvas. And they're all planned for CY 2024. So I'm going to open up a workbook. The author has shared this workbook with me. And you can see that there's a couple of dashboard filters exposed to me on this canvas. Same dashboard filters here. So let's just say that I'm going to change my ship mode to delivery truck, and I'm interested in appliances, bookcases, tables, and maybe office machines, right? So these are my core product subcategories and ship mode that I always want to perform or start my analysis in. So I filtered down to this data, and I'm going to go back to the workbook. And when I reload the workbook, you would see that those filter values are persistent, right? And this snapshot that I talked about, like snapshot within codes behind the scenes, will exist, right, as long as this workbook is shared with that end user. Now, this is a very interesting experience for a lot of our financial customers, where the number of filters that are exposed to the end users on our dashboard is pretty large, right? Because they have to select a bunch of ledger codes, supervisory organizations, cost centers and whatnot, right? And it's very difficult to enter or re-enter the same values every single time they load the workbook. So the auto persistence of filter values and personalizing those filter values to that end user is a rich feature to the product. And like I said, the future scope will address some of the concepts that we have in classic BI when it comes to personalization, and some of the features that our competitors have in terms of being able to save multiple states of filters, being able to bookmark a URL with the persisted filter values, and sharing that URL with other users within the organization. So that's why, this is a very interesting feature for me, and it has a lot of potential to improve the overall experience for our users. I'm going to stop now. Dan, I know I went over a bit on time.
That's great.
Pass it back to you.
Avinash, could you show the how to get the QR code? I think that would be neat for some people for sharing.
Oh yeah. So on the export dialog, you would notice that we've added a new option that will be easy for you to grab the URL using a QR code. So this is also a new feature that we've added to the September release, or you could simply hit on copy link and share it. But the QR code is another interesting way to. So when you do the QR code on your mobile, it's automatically going to do launch the workbook in the mobile browser. In future, we will then ask the user, do you want to launch in mobile browser or open up the mobile app if you have the app? If you don't have the app, then there'll be some guidance for the user to download the app. I think the idea here is to drive a lot of usage on our mobile app. So this is one of our critical features in September.
Thank you.
Now they'd have to have a user on the analytics server to effectively use that, correct?
Well, it depends on how the authentication for that user or for the organization is set up on the server. If they use SSO, then they'll have to authenticate using their SSO before they get access to the dashboard.
Okay. Yeah. I want to highlight a question that came in from Greg. Will it be possible? And by the way, it's a plug. If you want questions, go ahead and fire them in here. We got another few minutes to do that, but to try and answer those. But will it be possible to add role-based security on the present interface? So if we create multiple present canvases based on the same visualized canvas, can we control who can see for each one? For instance, we want to hide revenue on one for a certain set of users and not for another set of users.
Yeah, it is one of the use cases that we are evaluating using parameters. So ideally, using parameters, you can understand who the logged in user is, and based on the logged in user's access to, based on whatever user roles or user groups they are in, right? We want to either show or hide certain visualizations on a canvas, or show or hide certain canvases in a workbook. So it's definitely a use case that we are considering. Although in terms of priority, We still have to get a couple of more critical features for parameters. Like Dan mentioned, the action framework, right? When you select a mark and right click, I want to send that value to a parameter. That is a very powerful use case. So that is high in priority. We get to that first before we address this one, but definitely on the roadmap.
Yeah, Greg goes on and says, for the previous question regarding present canvas security, present canvas security, question really applies in general, so that we could even exclude a single canvas. And I've run into this also. For certain people, I don't want them to see all the canvases and so forth. Exclude a certain canvas entirely for a certain role, meaning there wouldn't have to be a one-to-many with a visualized canvas to present canvases. It'd be nice to exclude a canvas in present mode, that type of thing.
Yeah, no, I get the use case. I think we'll try to solve this using parameters. Okay. Overall, I don't have. I think we just need to design the solution in such a way that it addresses us to expand the use cases that we would support in terms of the show hide scenarios. Yeah,
we have the hide if in the semantic layer. We kind of need that in the data visualization area.
Sure.
And that would be very helpful if you guys can include that. So that's great. Some of these questions turn into, if you will, enhancement requests. Most of them you probably already know about, but maybe we'll bumping them up on the list by asking them in this type of venue. Okay.
Folks, you might want to think about going to the Idea Lab out on Cloud Customer Connect. If you've got something that you're really interested in that's not yet in the product, put it there. Product management watches that. And if other people think that it's a good idea, they can vote it up. And that's a great way for the community to tell Oracle what they're looking for, and then others to support that request.
Yeah, I know I've put some things in there before, and it's nice to see that, people do post questions in there, that type of thing. Here, I'll share my screen real quick to show what that looks like. I just popped it up here on here. So this is what that Idea Lab, we require a Go function, data sets. This is actually, I think it's coming. Some of this type of stuff, and then you can upvote these and try and lobby for your favorite feature. I also want to show real quick, come to think of it, this is the thing that Oracle doesn't highlight as much, is this preview section. I think there are of two minds. One, they wanted to have people try it out, but it's not fully supported yet, or they haven't tested it all, that type of thing. These things are in the preview. You can turn these features on, and that's where you want this preview workbook with personalization. It's over in the console. Turn on the preview features. It's where I go when I get a new release. What's all the cool stuff they have in preview that I want to experiment with and start getting familiar with? So just toggle these on, and now you can personalize notebooks and try out those new features. All right. I think with that, that's what especially we have prepared. If there are other questions, we'd love to have you guys add that in the Q&A panel. When that runs dry, in effect, we will end up closing the webinar. Avinash, I captured a couple of your PowerPoint screens just to add them to the presentation deck. We will make the deck available to everybody via the TechCasts page, so you can look at that. So here's your present flow experience in here. If you get a chance, shoot it to me and I'll put it in the unofficial one without me doing this, grabbing it from your screen capture. I'll also put out a quick plug for our upcoming Analytics and Data Summit 2024. Registration is now open. There's an early bird rate that you can get at this point registering for the conference. And if you want to cancel this far out, no problem. So if you're interested, go ahead and sign up. Also, if you want to speak at the conference, we just have a couple weeks left through October 30th to submit your ideas to present on. By the way, I'll tell you, if you're a customer using it, basically customers go about to the top of the queue just about. So if you have something you can do a session on, it doesn't have to be fancy. We'd love to hear your story of how you are implementing Oracle technology. Could be analytics, could be data, could be other things. Your story, we'd love to capture that and make that available come join us April 9th through 11th at the Oracle conference in Redwood Shores. We'll be showing a lot more things, and we'll talk more about what the conference contains. With that, I'm going to check and see anything else on Q&A. I tried to put some things in chat. Anything else, co-presenters, that I'm missing?
If you're interested in doing a TechCast with us, please let us know.
Oh, that's a good point, Wayne. Thank you.
Doesn't always have to be an I. Maybe we'd love to have a customer tell us their favorite store, or somebody else tell us their favorite feature. So, we do these every 2 months on the favorite features. So if you'd like to be one of our guest speakers, please drop us a line.
Here is that page. I happen to be sharing my screen. So if you go to AnDOUC.org, click on TechCasts, you'll get here. This is where you sign up for them. Also, you can come down here and submit an abstract and submit your idea. You don't have to travel to Redwood Shores to do it. We'd love to showcase what you're doing in one of these TechCasts. We have them scheduled for the rest of 2023, but there's open slots in 2024, and you can submit an abstract. It's the same engine whether you're submitting for the conference or for the TechCast. It's 2 different queues that those go into. All right, I'm looking to see anything else. I see a little bit of chatter on the chat, but let's see. I have from one person. This question came in, Avinash. I'm not sure if you typed this answer, but here's one question. Would it be possible to have the RPD descriptions added more broadly as hover over tooltips through all views in DV, similar to what was shown in tiles?
Well, if there is a description for the column in the RPD, the hover over tooltip should already display the description on the workbook UI.
In the workbook UI, I ran into this as well. I wanted to have our subject area descriptions be able to show up in the DV UI in the end user experience, and it looks like I'd have to set the description to auto, and that can appear. But would that be done? Can I do this across all the different visits, if you will?
No, at the moment, the new tile allows you to. So if there is a description of the column, we auto-populate the description on the tile visualization, which can then be customized. But it's a good point. I think it's a good feedback. In general, I think users have asked, hey, I need some kind of a text descriptor for the visualizations in DV. That way I can tell my audience what this data is about, right?
Yeah.
I think it's a valid feedback. I'm pretty sure there's a request in our backlog. We'll definitely consider that.
Yeah, I have a customer that I literally said, we need descriptions for all these, and she's filling it all out.
Yeah.
And it's a little bit of, for what purpose?
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
So
yeah, right now we ask customers to use a text visualization.
Yeah, if we can make it visible
I get it.
Across the thing, great. So Greg, we need to go and upvote those in the Idea Lab so we can hammer on Oracle to get our favorite features implemented. All right, with that, I'll try my first pass at closing things. Anything else, folks, to point out? Otherwise, thank you so much for joining us, and join again in December when we'll talk about the new features in the November release.
You'll have a great day, and thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Okay.
Bye.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.